Hello and welcome to another lesson in this OET course. In this particular one, we are looking at the structure of the reading subtest. In the previous lesson, we got to know that the subtest has three parts, A, B, and C, and in all you are answering 42 questions in 60 minutes. We're going to delve into detail and look at what happens in each of the parts of the subtest. You need 30 correct answers for a B, which most governing boards and councils require you to get, and that's 350 points. Part A has 20 questions and you're answering this in 15 minutes. There are 4 texts which are mostly found in workplaces in the health sector, and these include treatment options, dosages, daily care, and advice to patients. You need to be able to master speedy reading to be able to take care of questions in part A, and they go a long way to determine your overall score, because if you're unable to get a good number of the questions right in part A, then you're not likely to do very well in the subtest, because comparatively part A is the easiest to be answered, and so you need to make sure that you get a good hold of this part before you can get a good score. And I mentioned that you should be able to do speedy reading. You should get at least 17, 18 of the questions right if you hope to get the B. Let's look at the questions that you get to answer. Usually they are presented in numerical or visual forms, and there are 3 to 4 sets of matching information to text, gap fill, short answers, and sentence or notes completion questions. And they would be arranged in that numerical or visual information order. There are usually 4 sets of questions that would ask you to match information to text. Then there are some that you have to fill in gaps, some you have to write short answers, and for some you're supposed to complete notes or sentences in that part of the reading subtest. I mentioned that you need to be able to master speedy reading. You're reading very fast because if you do a rough calculation, 20 questions, 15 minutes, you're spending less than a minute on each of them. So how do you go about it to make sure that you're able to answer a good number of the questions right? You should skim and scan at first. Skim and scan at first. Before you skim and scan the text that you have, you need to read the questions and underline keywords in there. You should know what to look for in the text that you're going to read. You should be able to know what you're looking for. And usually the text is structured that so there are 4 texts, and these are lettered. So text A, text B, text C, and then D. Text A, B, and C would have would be arranged more or less in a passage form. And then text D, sometimes these can interchange, but one of the text would be presented in a graphical form. So it could either be a table, a bar graph, a line graph, or any of the visual information types that there are. You need to be able to skim and scan all these 4 texts. And like I said, before you do that, read the questions, underline keywords. And these keywords are words that are crucial to the text that you have, or to the question that you have. For example, the text, the question of what is your name? Name is a keyword in there. And of course, you don't have to forget the pronoun because it determines what the answer would be. So you take note of the keywords, you underline them in the questions. You need to make sure that you read all the 20 questions that you have, because the arrangement of the questions are not going to correspond. The arrangement of the questions is not going to correspond with the arrangement of the text of the information, and so you cannot do the first set and then you go back and forth. You have to read all the questions, underline the keywords, and make sure that you have them in mind. Usually these questions are very, short types, and so you should be able to get hold of what you have to look for in the text that you're about to scan, and later do detailed reading or close reading to find the answers to the questions that you have. As you do the skimming and scanning, of course, you need to pay attention to the keywords you underlined in the questions, because their paraphrased versions are what you would find in the text, and these will lead you to the answers, or they will be the answers to the questions that you have. Make sure that you read every part of the text. Even the small notes made under the text are very important. Sometimes questions are asked based on them. So make sure that you read everything. Focus on the synonyms and paraphrase versions of the keywords you underline in the questions, and these would help you to find the answers to the questions that you have. After this part A, when the 15 minutes elapses, your question papers will be collected from you, because it is on the question paper that you write the answers. You write the answers on the question papers, on the question paper in the spaces provided. Unlike the listening, spelling is a big deal in the reading subtest, and so you need to make sure that you get your spelling right. But of course, why would you get the spelling wrong when you're getting all of the answers from the text that you have? You're choosing a word or a short phrase to answer the questions that you have in part A, so you don't have to make any spelling mistake. Try as much as possible to stick with what you have in there and not try to do the spelling of head on your own. Parts B and C last 45 minutes, and you're doing this together after the part A has been collected from you. You are going to shade for parts B and C. You are shading for parts B and C. Part B has 6 short extracts, and these range between 100 to 150 words. Like we learned in the previous lesson, the texts are mostly from procedural and policy documents. Examples are medication reviews, guidelines for good healthcare practice, use of medical equipment. Each of the text would have a question for you to answer. So a text and then a question, and each of the questions would come with 3 option multiple choices. So you have 3 options to choose from. To be able to answer these questions in part B, you need to focus on distractors. One option would be the odd one out, so you can just discard that as easily as possible. But 2 of the options will be difficult for you to choose between in terms of which one is the right answer. The distractor would either have a partial information, would have part of the information contained in the text, or would have an extra information that is not captured in the text, or it may be a contradiction of what what the information is saying in the text. You need to be able to identify these nuances about the option, about the distractor, to be able to settle on the right answer. Part C has, before we go to Part C, Part B texts are information heavy. Although they are very short, they are dense. They contain a lot of information that you need to be able to read and understand them to answer the questions. Don't be deceived by the fact that these are short text. They are information heavy, they are dense, they contain a lot of information, and you need to be able to read, especially to read and understand, especially because you're looking to answer questions of gist. And if you're not too careful, it'll be very difficult for you to find the theme or the central focus of these texts that you have on the question paper or in the text booklets. Part C has 2 long texts, and they range between 750 and 850 words. These are taken from journals and websites, and they focus on expressing arguments and perspective rather than facts. They are aimed generally at a medical audience, and there are 8 questions each for the 2 texts that you have, and each of the questions comes with 4 multiple choice options for you to choose one from. Like I said, of options in Part B, one would definitely be the odd one out. 1 or 2 of them would have partial or extra information. One would be a contradiction, and one would be the actual answer. So you're supposed to do this analysis every time you're practicing to get hold of that particular strategy to be able to answer the questions on the day of the test. You should be able to read and understand these texts that you have. The questions would be arranged according to the paragraphing of the text. So usually the first question is based on either the first paragraph or the second one, which means that the second question would follow in that order when it comes to the number of the paragraphs that you have. You don't have to move above a paragraph to find the answer to a question that comes, after after a particular question. Always you're going down in that descending order to find the answers to the questions that you have. There would always be questions of grammar. It's an English proficiency test. So although you're dealing with text within the health sector, of course, you're dealing with a language, so you have to think about grammar as well as you answer these questions, because there'll be questions bordering purely on grammar. To be able to answer questions in parts B and C, you need to be able to do thorough and extended reading. For part A, you're doing speedy reading. B and C, you're doing thorough and extended reading. You need to be able to read, take your time, read and understand. The fact that you're supposed to take your time doesn't mean that you should waste the time. You're supposed to read. Remember, you have just 60 minutes and you're answering 42 questions. 20 of them is for part A for 15 minutes. So it means in the parts B and C, you are doing 22 questions in the 45 minutes. So if you compare parts A to B and C, you realize that you have enough time to take care of the B and C. And so you need to be able to understand what you're reading to answer the questions. You need to focus on just the overall information, the central focus. You need to be able to identify main points, main ideas. You need to be able to get detailed and specific information. Then you should be able to recognize attitudes and opinions, because text in parts B and C would largely deal with opinions and attitudes, especially part C. When you're dealing with part C questions also, make sure that for the answers you provide, they are based on the context of the text that you have before you. Because, for example, you'll be asked about what it, the pronoun it, what it is referring to in, let's say, paragraph 5. To be able to tell what it is referring to, you need to go to paragraph 5 and read that particular sentence. Of course, you have to go to the one before it and the one after it to be able to answer these this particular question. Do not ignore anything that you read. When you're answering questions in part B, make sure that you read the question first. You can, of course, ignore the multiple choice options that you have. Read a question, underline keywords in there, then you read the text. So you read the question, understand it, underline keywords, then you read the text. Find the answer on your own, then you compare that answer with the options that you have and get a paraphrase version of what you got from the passage that you read or from the text that you read. If you come to part C, you are doing the same thing, because the questions, the arrangement of the questions correspond with the arrangement of the paragraphs. You read the question. Let's say you read question 1, it's directing you to the first paragraph. Once you read the question, go to the paragraph, read that, get the answer on your own, and then come look for the paraphrase version in the options that you have. Paying attention to the distractor, partial or extra information, or a contradiction to be able to settle on the right answer. I'll see you in the next lesson as we share tips and strategies to help you to get a good number of the questions right to pass the reading subtest.